My name is Aria Carrington, and at 24 years old, I never expected my college graduation would become the sweetest form of revenge I could have ever imagined. Standing beside my sister Emma at the university ceremony, surrounded by proud families and the sound of applause echoing across the quad, should have been simply joyful. The June sun was shining, caps were flying through the air, and everyone was celebrating their achievements. But years of unfair treatment and blatant favoritism had built up to this moment, and I could barely contain the satisfaction building in my chest. I still hear their cold words echoing in my mind. Emma deserves our investment. You'll figure something out on your own. The memory of that night when they sat me down at our dining room table, explaining why they could afford Emma's private college tuition, but not mine, still makes my blood boil. Before I reveal what made their faces turn ghostly pale when they realized what I had accomplished, let me ask you this. If you've ever had to fight twice as hard to prove your worth while watching someone else get handed everything, hit that like button. Because this story is for everyone who's ever been counted out. Let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in what appeared to be a typical middle-class family in suburban Denver, Colorado. Our ranch-style house with the perfectly manicured lawn looked idyllic from the outside, complete with family photos that captured our practiced smiles while hiding the complicated dynamics brewing beneath the surface. My parents, Michael and Susan Carrington, both worked steady jobs, Dad as a mechanical engineer and Mom as a pharmacy technician. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we were comfortable enough that I assumed college would be within reach for both Emma and me. Emma was 2 years younger than me, but somehow she always seemed miles ahead in our parents' eyes. With her naturally straight auburn hair that never seemed to have a bad day, her effortless straight-A report cards, and her ability to charm every adult she met, she embodied everything they valued. Teachers loved her, neighbors adored her, and our parents beamed with pride whenever anyone mentioned her name. Don't get me wrong, I loved my sister. Emma wasn't intentionally cruel or manipulative. She was actually kind-hearted and generous, which somehow made the situation more frustrating. It would have been easier to resent her if she'd been mean-spirited, but instead, I had to watch this genuinely good person receive every advantage while I scrambled for scraps of attention and support. The differential treatment started early and in small ways. Emma's art supplies were always brand new and expensive, while mine were the generic versions from the discount store. When she showed interest in piano lessons, they immediately enrolled her with the best teacher in town. When I asked about guitar lessons, they suggested I could probably learn from YouTube videos. Emma's academic achievements were celebrated with family dinners at nice restaurants and framed certificates on the refrigerator. My accomplishments were acknowledged with a quick, good job, before the conversation inevitably shifted back to Emma's latest success. When Emma made honor roll, they bought her a new laptop. When I made honor roll the same semester, they said they were proud, but that the laptop Emma wasn't using much could probably be shared. The pattern was so consistent that I began to accept it as normal. This was just how our family worked. Emma was the star, and I was the supporting character in her story. But the real eye-opener came during my junior year of high school, when college conversations started becoming serious in our household. The autumn of my junior year, our kitchen table became the stage for family college planning sessions that would change everything. Emma was a freshman in high school, but already our parents were discussing her future with an enthusiasm they'd never shown for mine. We've been looking into some really excellent private colleges for Emma, Mom announced one October evening as we sat down for dinner. Places like Davidson College and Furman University. They have smaller class sizes and better networking opportunities. I looked up from my mashed potatoes, confused. What about me? I'll be applying to colleges next year. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. Well, Arya, we've been meaning to discuss that with you. The thing is, we can really only afford to fully support one college education, and we think Emma has the best chance of maximizing that investment. The words hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean, maximizing the investment? Emma's grades are exceptional, Mom explained, cutting her chicken with more precision than necessary, avoiding my eyes. Her SAT prep scores are already in the 1400s, and she's only a freshman. The guidance counselor says she has real potential for merit scholarships at top-tier schools. My grades are good too, I protested, feeling my voice crack slightly. I have a 3.7 GPA and I'm in 3 AP classes. Good isn't the same as exceptional, sweetheart, Dad said with a patronizing smile that made my stomach turn. Emma's academic trajectory suggests she could get into pre-med programs or competitive business schools. That kind of education pays for itself. I stared at them, processing what they were really saying. They weren't just refusing to pay for my college, they were telling me I wasn't worth the investment. So, what am I supposed to do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. There are plenty of options, Mom said brightly, as if she were offering me an exciting opportunity rather than cutting me off from my dreams. Community college is very affordable and you could transfer after 2 years. Or you could take a gap year and work to save money. Some people aren't meant for the traditional 4-year college experience, and that's perfectly fine. Emma, who had been unusually quiet during this conversation, finally spoke up. Mom, Dad, that doesn't seem fair. Arya works really hard too. This isn't about fairness, Emma, Dad said firmly. It's about making smart financial decisions for the family's future. Arya will figure out her path, just like millions of other kids do. That night, I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, replaying their words over and over. Arya will figure out her path. The casual dismissal in those words felt like a door slamming shut on my future. But something else was building alongside the hurt and anger, determination. If they thought I couldn't make it on my own, I would prove them wrong. If they believed Emma was the only one worth investing in, I would show them exactly what they'd passed up. The next morning, I marched into my guidance counselor's office and asked for every piece of information she had about scholarships, financial aid, and work-study programs. Mrs. Rodriguez, my guidance counselor, was a small woman with fierce eyes who had been helping students navigate college applications for over 20 years. When I explained my situation, though I tried to put a positive spin on it, saying my parents wanted me to be more independent, she saw right through my carefully constructed explanation. Arya, she said, leaning back in her chair and studying my face, how are you really feeling about the situation? The kindness in her voice broke something loose inside me, and before I knew it, I was telling her everything. The years of favoritism, the casual dismissal of my achievements, the way they talked about Emma's future like it was precious gold while treating mine like spare change. I'm angry, I admitted, tears threatening to spill over. But more than that, I'm determined. I want to prove them wrong. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded slowly. Good. Anger can be fuel if you channel it correctly. Let's build you a plan that will make their heads spin. Over the next several weeks, Mrs. Rodriguez and I crafted what I privately called the revenge plan, though she preferred to call it the independence strategy. The plan had 3 main components. First, academic excellence. I would need to raise my GPA and crush the SATs to qualify for merit-based scholarships. Mrs. Rodriguez connected me with free SAT prep resources and helped me identify which classes would most boost my GPA. Second, extracurricular distinction. I needed to stand out in ways that scholarship committees would notice. Mrs. Rodriguez helped me identify leadership opportunities and community service projects that aligned with my interests in environmental science. Third, financial literacy and work experience. I would need to understand the college financing process inside and out, and I would need to earn money to cover what scholarships didn't. The beautiful thing about this plan, Mrs. Rodriguez said with a slight smile, is that you're going to develop skills and resilience that trust fund kids never have to learn. When you succeed, and you will succeed, it will be because you earned every bit of it. I threw myself into the plan with the intensity that surprised even me. I spent my winter break taking practice SATs instead of sleeping in. I started a recycling awareness program at school that turned into a district-wide initiative. I got a part-time job at a local environmental nonprofit, making copies and answering phones for $8 an hour, but learning everything I could about conservation work. The change in my academic performance was dramatic. My first semester senior year, I pulled a 4.0 for the first time in high school. When report cards came out, I waited for some acknowledgement from my parents, some sign that they noticed my improvement. "Great job on your grades, honey," Mom said distractedly while opening Emma's report card. "Emma, another perfect semester. We're so proud. Let's celebrate at Marcelo's this weekend." I watched them fuss over Emma's report card, identical to mine, by the way, and felt that familiar burn of being overlooked. But this time, instead of just feeling hurt, I felt motivated. Let them celebrate Emma's expected success. My success was going to be a complete shock. Senior year application season was like running a marathon while everyone else got to ride in cars. While Emma was casually browsing college websites and talking about which campus had the prettiest dorms, I was grinding through scholarship applications with the focus of someone whose entire future depended on it, because it did. I applied to 12 schools, ranging from state universities to small liberal arts colleges, all selected based on their generous financial aid packages and strong environmental science programs. But I also applied for every scholarship I could find. Local business scholarships, environmental organization grants, essays contests, you name it. If there was money available for hardworking students, I was going after it. The scholarship application process was brutal. Each one required essays, letters of recommendation, transcripts, and often interviews. I wrote so many personal statements about overcoming challenges and demonstrating leadership that I could recite them in my sleep. I asked teachers for recommendation letters so often that they started joking about it. Another scholarship, Aria? Mr. Peterson, my AP environmental science teacher, asked when I approached him for the 5th recommendation letter. "At this rate, you're going to fund your entire education through scholarships." "That's the plan," I replied, and I wasn't kidding. My SAT scores came back in March, 1510. It was higher than Emma's projected scores, higher than I'd ever dared to hope. Mrs. Rodriguez actually cheered when I showed her the results. "Aria, this changes everything," she said, grabbing my hands. "With scores like this and your improved GPA, you're going to have options you didn't even know existed." She was right. Acceptance letters started arriving in April, and with them came financial aid packages that took my breath away. The University of Colorado offered me a full tuition merit scholarship plus a stipend for books. Colorado State offered me their President's Scholarship, which covered tuition, room, and board. Even some out-of-state schools were offering significant money. But the crown jewel came in late April, a full-ride scholarship to study environmental engineering at Stanford University. Not just tuition, everything. Room, board, books, even money for research expenses and study abroad programs. It was worth over $300,000 across 4 years. I remember opening that letter in the hallway at school, reading it 3 times before the reality hit me. I had done it. Not only was I going to college, I was going to one of the best universities in the world, and it wasn't costing me or my family a single penny. I ran to Mrs. Rodriguez's office, waving the letter like a victory flag. "I knew it," she said, tears in her eyes. "I absolutely knew you had this in you. Arya, do you realize what you've accomplished? You've secured a world-class education through nothing but your own hard work and determination." That evening at dinner, I decided it was time to share my news. Emma was excitedly talking about the 3 colleges she'd been accepted to, all of which came with tuition bills that would cost my parents over $50,000 per year. "That's wonderful, Emma," I said when she finished describing the campus tours they'd planned. "I have some college news too." "Oh, that's right," Mom said, as if just remembering that I existed. "Where did you decide to go? The community college or state?" I placed the Stanford letter on the table. "Actually, I'll be attending Stanford University on a full-ride scholarship." The silence that followed was deafening. Dad picked up the letter, his eyes scanning the contents with the focus of someone trying to solve a complex equation. Mom's mouth opened and closed without any sound coming out. Emma stared at me like I'd just announced I was moving to Mars. "This can't be right," Dad finally said. "Stanford doesn't just give out full scholarships. They do to students with exceptional academic achievement and demonstrated leadership," I replied, using the exact phrase from their scholarship description. Apparently, my SAT scores and GPA qualified me for their most competitive merit awards. Mom found her voice. "Your SAT scores? When did you take the SATs?" 3 times, to get the best possible score. I got a 1510. Another silence. "That's higher than my score," Emma said quietly. "It's fine, Emma," Dad said quickly. "Standardized tests don't measure everything. Your overall profile is still excellent." I felt a familiar anger rising, but this time it was mixed with something new, power. For the first time in my life, I had something they couldn't dismiss or minimize. "Well," Mom said, clearly struggling to process this information, "it's wonderful that you found a way to make college work out. Though Stanford is quite far from home." "Actually, the distance is perfect," I said, standing up from the table. "I think some space will be good for all of us." Stanford was everything I had dreamed and more than I had ever imagined possible. The campus was gorgeous, the academics were challenging in the best way, and for the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who valued hard work and intellectual curiosity above family connections or inherited advantages. My freshman year roommate, Zoe, was a brilliant computer science major from a working-class family in Oakland who had also earned her way to Stanford through academic achievement. We bonded immediately over our shared experience of being the first in our families to attend an elite university. "It's weird, right?" Zoe said one evening as we studied in our dorm room. "Being here with all these kids who just assumed they'd go to top colleges because their parents went to top colleges, while we're here because we earned it." I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. There were definitely students at Stanford who belonged there purely based on merit, but there were also plenty who seemed to take their presence for granted in a way that Zoe and I never could. But that difference, the fact that we had fought for our spot, became our superpower. While some of our classmates coasted on natural ability or family expectations, Zoe and I approached every class, every project, every opportunity with the intensity of people who knew what it meant to earn their place. My academic performance in college was stellar from day one. I made Dean's List every semester, not because I was naturally smarter than my classmates, but because I had developed the work ethic and resilience that comes from having to prove yourself over and over again. More importantly, I threw myself into research opportunities that would set me apart in my field. I joined Dr. Sarah Chen's environmental engineering lab as a sophomore, working on groundwater contamination projects that would eventually lead to published research papers with my name on them. Dr. Chen became an unexpected mentor, someone who saw potential in me that went beyond just being a good student. "Arya," she said during one of our lab meetings, "you have an unusual combination of technical skill and practical problem-solving ability. Have you considered graduate school?" The suggestion caught me off guard. Graduate school hadn't been on my radar. I was so focused on just getting through undergraduate that I hadn't thought about what came next. "I don't know if I could afford more school," I said honestly. Dr. Chen laughed. "With your research record and academic performance, you wouldn't pay for graduate school. Graduate school would pay you. PhD programs in environmental engineering fund their students. Plus, with the research you're doing here, you'd be a competitive candidate for NSF fellowships and EPA grants." That conversation opened up a possibility I had never considered. Not just attending graduate school, but being paid to attend graduate school to conduct research that could make a real difference in the world. By my junior year, I had co-authored 2 research papers, presented at 3 academic conferences, and completed internships with both the Environmental Protection Agency and a consulting firm that worked on large-scale remediation projects. My resume was building into something that impressed even me. But the most transformative experience came during my senior year, when Dr. Chen invited me to join a research project that would take us to communities affected by water contamination in rural Colorado, ironically, not far from where I grew up. Working with families whose drinking water had been contaminated by industrial runoff, I saw how environmental engineering could directly improve people's lives. We developed filtration systems that were not only effective but affordable and maintainable by the communities themselves. One of the families we worked with, the Garcias, invited our research team to dinner after we'd successfully cleaned their water supply. As we sat around their kitchen table, eating homemade tamales and drinking water that was safe for the first time in years, Mrs. Garcia took my hands. "Mija," she said, tears in her eyes, "you saved my grandchildren. They can drink from the tap now because of you." In that moment, I understood what I was meant to do with my life. This wasn't just about proving my parents wrong or achieving academic success. This was about using my skills to solve real problems for real people. I applied to graduate programs with a clear sense of purpose and a research record that made me a standout candidate. When acceptances started coming in, along with fellowship offers that would pay me a salary to pursue my PhD, I felt like I was living in a dream. But the best was yet to come. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in April of my senior year. I was in the library, working on my honors thesis, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Arya Carrington?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes, this is." "This is Dr. Maria Santos from the National Science Foundation. I'm calling to inform you that you've been selected as this year's recipient of the Graduate Research Fellowship in Environmental Engineering." I almost dropped the phone. The NSF Graduate Research Fellowship was one of the most prestigious awards available to young researchers. It provided 3 years of funding for graduate school plus money for research expenses, and it was only awarded to about 12% of applicants. "Are you sure?" I asked, because it seemed too good to be true. Dr. Santos laughed. "I'm very sure. Your research proposal on affordable water treatment systems for underserved communities was exceptional. The review panel was particularly impressed by your combination of technical innovation and real-world application. After I hung up, I sat in the library for a few minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Then I called Dr. Chin. "Arya," she shouted when I told her the news. "Do you realize what this means? The NSF Fellowship is going to open doors for you that most people can only dream of." But the recognition didn't stop there. My undergraduate research was selected for the Best Student Paper Award at the National Environmental Engineering Conference. My honors thesis won the university's top prize for undergraduate research. And then, just a week before graduation, I received a call that would change everything. "Miss Carrington, this is James Mitchell from the Goldman Environmental Foundation. We'd like to invite you to apply for our Young Environmental Leaders program." The Goldman Environmental Foundation. I'd heard of them. They were the organization behind the Nobel Prize for the Environment, awarded annually to grassroots environmental heroes from around the world. "We've been following your research on community-based water treatment systems," Mr. Mitchell continued. "We're launching a new initiative to support young environmental leaders who are developing practical solutions to environmental problems, and your work fits perfectly with our mission." The application process was intensive: essays, interviews, presentations, and site visits to the communities where I'd done my research. But 6 weeks later, I received another life-changing phone call. "Congratulations, Arya. You've been selected as one of our inaugural Young Environmental Leaders. The fellowship includes $50,000 for continued research, plus mentorship and networking opportunities with some of the world's leading environmental advocates." When I hung up the phone, I realized I was crying. Not sad tears, but tears of overwhelming gratitude and disbelief. 3 years ago, my parents had written me off as not worth investing in. Now, I was being recognized by international organizations as a leader in my field. But there was one more recognition coming that would make graduation day unforgettable. The morning of Stanford's graduation ceremony was perfect, sunny and warm, with a gentle breeze that made the flags around the quad flutter like celebration banners. I put on my cap and gown, adjusting the honor cords that marked my academic achievements: magna cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa, outstanding senior in environmental engineering. My parents and Emma had driven out from Colorado for the ceremony. It was the first time they'd visited me at Stanford in 4 years, and I could see them looking around the campus with a mixture of awe and confusion, as if they couldn't quite believe this was where I'd been living and studying. "It's quite impressive," Dad said as we walked toward the ceremony venue. Different from what I expected. What had he expected? I wondered. A lesser school for his lesser daughter? The graduation ceremony itself was beautiful, held in Stanford Stadium with thousands of families cheering for their graduates. But the real moment came after the general ceremony, during the individual school celebrations. The School of Engineering held its own recognition ceremony, where individual awards and honors were announced. I sat with my fellow graduates, trying to contain my excitement about what was coming. Dean Roberts took the podium for the special recognitions. Each year, we recognize one graduating senior who has demonstrated exceptional achievement in research, academic excellence, and service to the community. This year's recipient has co-authored multiple research papers, earned recognition from the National Science Foundation, and developed innovative solutions to real-world environmental problems that are already being implemented in communities across the western United States. I saw my parents lean forward in their seats, probably wondering which student was being honored. It gives me great pleasure to present the Outstanding Graduate Award in Environmental Engineering to Arya Carrington. The applause was thunderous as I walked to the stage, but all I could focus on was the look of absolute shock on my parents' faces. Mom's mouth was hanging open. Dad looked like he was trying to solve a math problem he couldn't figure out. Emma was clapping enthusiastically, a huge smile on her face. Dean Roberts shook my hand and handed me the award, a beautiful crystal plaque engraved with my name and achievement. "Aria," he said into the microphone, "would you like to say a few words?" I took the microphone and looked out at the audience, finding my family in the crowd. For years ago, someone told me that I would have to figure out my own path because I wasn't worth investing in, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the audience. Today, I'm happy to report that I figured it out. I'm heading to MIT in the fall on a full fellowship to pursue my PhD, and I'll be working with the Goldman Environmental Foundation to expand access to clean water in underserved communities. The applause was even louder this time, but I was watching my parents' faces. The shock was giving way to something else, realization, maybe even pride, though it was 4 years too late. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos and celebration, my parents approached me with expressions I'd never seen before. "Aria," Mom said, her voice shaky. "We had no idea. We didn't know you were doing such important work." "You never asked," I replied simply. Dad cleared his throat. "We may have misjudged your potential." "You didn't misjudge my potential," I said, looking directly at him. "You decided I wasn't worth the investment." "There's a difference." Emma stepped forward and hugged me tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "I always knew you were amazing, but this is incredible." Later that evening, at the family dinner they insisted on taking me to, Dad made what I think was supposed to be an apology. "Aria, your mother and I want you to know that we're very proud of what you've accomplished. Maybe we could have been more supportive earlier, but look how well you turned out. Maybe you needed that independence to become who you are." I set down my fork and looked at him. "Dad, with all due respect, don't try to take credit for my success by calling your neglect tough love. I succeeded despite you, not because of you." The table fell silent. "I'm not angry anymore," I continued. "I'm grateful, actually. You taught me that I couldn't depend on anyone but myself, and that turned out to be the most valuable lesson you could have given me. But let's be honest about what happened here." Mom dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. "We're sorry, Aria. We were wrong." It was the first time either of them had actually apologized, and while it didn't erase the years of feeling overlooked and undervalued, it was something. "I accept your apology," I said. "But I need you to understand something. Emma is amazing, and she deserves every opportunity you've given her. But I was amazing too, and I deserved better than being written off as not worth the investment." Emma reached across the table and took my hand. "You're right. And for what it's worth, I'm going to make sure my achievements are my own, not just because of the advantages I was given." That was the moment I realized Emma had been watching and learning too. 6 months later, I was settled into my PhD program at MIT, working in one of the most advanced environmental engineering labs in the world. My research on affordable water treatment systems had evolved into a project with the potential to impact millions of people in developing countries. My relationship with my parents had improved, though it would never be the same. They made an effort to stay connected, calling regularly and showing genuine interest in my work. Dad even started sending me articles about environmental engineering that he found interesting, though most of them were too basic to be useful. The real relationship transformation was with Emma. She was thriving at her private college, but she'd also started questioning some of her advantages in ways that I found impressive. I turned down the internship Dad set up for me through his connections, she told me during one of our regular phone calls. I want to earn my opportunities the way you did. Emma, you don't have to prove anything to me, I said. Use your advantages, but use them to make a difference, not just to make yourself comfortable. She was already doing that. Emma had changed her major to social work and was volunteering with homeless families in her college town. She was using her privilege to help others, which made me proud of the person she was becoming. The Goldman Environmental Foundation Fellowship was opening doors I hadn't even known existed. I was invited to speak at conferences, collaborate with researchers around the world, and work directly with communities implementing the water treatment systems I'd helped develop. One of the most rewarding experiences came 8 months after graduation, when I returned to Colorado to visit the Garcia family, the same family whose contaminated water had inspired my research focus. Mija, Mrs. Garcia exclaimed when she saw me at their door. Come in, come in. We have been following your achievements. We are so proud. She led me to their kitchen, where the water filtration system we'd installed was still working perfectly. But more than that, Mr. Garcia had learned to maintain and repair the system, and he was now helping other families in neighboring communities install their own systems. You didn't just give us clean water, Mr. Garcia explained. You gave us the knowledge to help ourselves and help others. That is the greatest gift. As I drove back to the airport that day, I reflected on how much had changed since that devastating dinner conversation 4 years earlier. My parents had seen me as a bad investment, a daughter who wasn't worth their financial support. Now I was pursuing a career that would let me improve thousands of lives while earning recognition from some of the most prestigious institutions in the world. But the most important thing I'd learned wasn't about proving doubters wrong or achieving recognition. It was about understanding my own worth, regardless of what anyone else believed about my potential. My story started spreading in ways I never expected. Dr. Chin encouraged me to write about my experience for academic publications, focusing on how adversity can fuel achievement in STEM fields. The article I wrote, When Family Won't Invest, Finding Your Own Path to STEM Success, was published in the Journal of Engineering Education and generated more response than anything I'd ever written. Young women started reaching out to me through email and social media, sharing their own stories of being overlooked or underestimated by their families. Many of them were facing the same situation I had, parents who were willing to invest in sons or more traditionally promising children while expecting daughters to figure things out on their own. I realized I had an opportunity to do more than just pursue my own research. I could help other students navigate the path I'd struggled to find alone. Working with Mrs. Rodriguez, who had become a close friend and mentor, I started a scholarship program for students whose families couldn't or wouldn't support their college education. We called it the Cellmade Scholars Program, and we focused specifically on students who showed academic potential but lacked family financial support. The first year, we were able to provide scholarships to 12 students. By the third year, we'd expanded to support over 50 students annually, with donations coming from successful professionals who had overcome similar challenges. One of our scholarship recipients, Maria Gonzalez, reminded me so much of myself at 17. She was brilliant, hardworking, and completely dismissed by her family, who believed that investing in their son's education was more important than supporting their daughter's dreams of becoming a doctor. I never thought medical school was possible, Maria told me when we met for coffee during her sophomore year in college. My parents kept saying that girls from our neighborhood don't become doctors. But seeing what you accomplished made me realize that maybe they were wrong about what's possible. 3 years later, Maria was accepted to medical school with full funding through a combination of scholarships and research fellowships. Her parents, like mine, were shocked by her achievements and had to confront their own assumptions about their daughter's potential. 5 years after that graduation day revenge moment, I'm completing my PhD at MIT and preparing to launch a startup company focused on bringing affordable water treatment technology to underserved communities worldwide. The Goldman Environmental Foundation has renewed my fellowship for another 3 years, and I've been invited to present my research at the United Nations Climate Change Conference. My relationship with my parents has evolved into something healthier, though it will always be complicated. They've learned to value my achievements, and they've become advocates for other parents to recognize and support all their children's potential. Dad actually gives speeches now at school board meetings about the importance of investing equally in all children's education. Emma graduated summa cum laude and is now working as a social worker in inner-city Denver, using her privilege and education to advocate for families in poverty. She often says that watching my journey taught her that having advantages meant she had a responsibility to help others who weren't given the same opportunities. The most rewarding part of my story isn't the recognition or the successful career I'm building. It's the other stories I've been able to influence. The scholarship recipients who are now thriving in college. The parents who've reconsidered their assumptions about which children are worth investing in. The young women who've reached out to tell me that hearing my story gave them the courage to pursue their dreams despite lack of family support. If I could go back and change what happened, if I could make my parents recognize my potential from the beginning and provide equal support for both Emma and me, I honestly don't know if I would. Don't get me wrong, those years of feeling overlooked and undervalued were painful. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep, wondering why I wasn't good enough to deserve my parents' investment. There were moments when I doubted whether I was smart enough or capable enough to succeed on my own. But that struggle also gave me something invaluable, an unshakable belief in my own abilities and a determination that can't be taught or inherited. When you've had to fight for every opportunity, you develop a resilience and work ethic that becomes your superpower. More importantly, it gave me empathy for others who are underestimated and overlooked. My research focuses on environmental solutions for underserved communities because I understand what it feels like to be dismissed as not worth the investment. My scholarship program exists because I remember how alone I felt when I was told to figure out my own path. The irony is that my parents' refusal to invest in my education led to me receiving far more educational support than they ever could have provided. Between scholarships, fellowships, and grants, my undergraduate and graduate education has been funded to the tune of over $500,000, all of it earned through my own achievements. But beyond the financial value, I gained something much more precious. The knowledge that I could depend on myself, that my worth wasn't determined by what others believed about my potential, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding beyond anyone's wildest expectations. To anyone reading this who feels overlooked, underestimated, or told they're not worth investing in, your value is not determined by other people's willingness to bet on you. Whether it's parents who favor a sibling, teachers who don't see your potential, or employers who overlook your contributions, their limitations don't define your possibilities. The path of proving yourself is harder than the path of inherited advantage, but it builds something in you that can't be taken away. When you succeed despite lack of support, that success belongs entirely to you. No one can diminish it by claiming they made you who you are or take credit for your achievements. Use the anger. Use the disappointment. Use the dismissal as fuel for your determination. But don't let bitterness consume you or convince you that you have to do everything alone forever. Find mentors like Mrs. Rodriguez and Dr. Chin who see your potential and want to help you succeed. Build relationships with people who believe in you, even when your own family doesn't. Most importantly, remember that success isn't just about proving doubters wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about discovering that you were capable of amazing things all along, even when no one else could see it. The sweetest revenge isn't making people who dismissed you feel bad about their choices. The sweetest revenge is building a life so fulfilling and impactful that their opinion becomes irrelevant. It's reaching a point where you're grateful for the independence they forced you to develop, because it led you to achievements beyond what anyone, including yourself, thought possible. My parents thought Emma was the better investment because she seemed like a sure thing. But safe investments rarely yield extraordinary returns. Sometimes the biggest transformations come from the people no one expects to succeed. If you've made it this far in my story, you probably see something of yourself in my experience. Maybe you're the overlooked sibling, the underestimated student, or the child whose dreams don't fit your family's expectations. If that's you, I want you to know something. Your potential is not determined by other people's ability to recognize it. The world needs what you have to offer, even if the people closest to you can't see it yet. Sometimes especially because they can't see it yet. So hit that like button if this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, the best chapters of your story are still being written. Make them count. I'm writing this from my office at Clean Water Solutions, the company I founded 3 years ago. Through the window, I can see the laboratory where my team is developing our next generation of affordable water treatment systems. We've now installed our technology in over 200 communities across 12 countries, providing clean drinking water to more than 50,000 people. Last month, I was invited to speak at a conference on women in STEM, where I shared the stage with Dr. Chen, who has become not just a mentor but a close friend and collaborator. In the audience, I spotted several of our self-made scholars' scholarship recipients, including Maria, who is now in her final year of medical school. After my presentation, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 18, with determined eyes that reminded me of myself at that age. "Ms. Carrington," she said, "I heard your story, and I wanted to thank you. My parents told me I should focus on finding a husband instead of pursuing engineering, because they won't pay for college for something they think I'll just give up. But hearing what you accomplished makes me think maybe I can find another way." I handed her my business card and Mrs. Rodriguez's contact information. "You absolutely can find another way," I told her. "And you don't have to do it alone." As she walked away, I thought about how many young people are out there right now, feeling dismissed and overlooked by the very people who should be their biggest supporters. How many potential discoveries, innovations, and world-changing achievements are being stifled by families who can't see past their own limitations and biases. That's why I keep telling this story, even though it sometimes feels like reopening old wounds. Because somewhere out there is another 17-year-old Aria, sitting at a dinner table being told she's not worth the investment, wondering if her dreams are realistic or if she should just accept the limitations others have placed on her. I want that person to know what I wish someone had told me: you are worth every investment you're willing to make in yourself. Your dreams are not too big, your goals are not unrealistic, and your potential is not determined by other people's inability to recognize it. The path won't be easy, but it will be yours. And sometimes, the most beautiful destinations are only reached by the roads less traveled. My parents were wrong about a lot of things, but they were accidentally right about one. I did figure out my own path. I figured out a path that was more ambitious, more impactful, and more fulfilling than anything they could have imagined for me. And if you're reading this feeling overlooked and underestimated, I believe you'll figure out your path too. Make it a path that amazes everyone, especially yourself. The greatest revenge is a life well lived. Go live yours. If this story inspired you, or if you know someone who needs to hear it, please share it. And if you're a student facing similar challenges, remember that there are people and organizations ready to help you succeed. Your worth is not determined by other people's willingness to invest in you. It's determined by your willingness to invest in yourself. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is being forced to bet on yourself. You might just surprise everyone with how much you win.